It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelly, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time, and I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney.
And we've successfully landed on TOI 700D.
Successfully? We crashed.
And the ship requires only minor repairs, and we're both in one piece.
Well, you are at least.
Can we not do this right now? How about we scout the planet a little bit, see what we're dealing with here? I've got a good feeling about this one.
You keep saying that about every planet, and I have no idea what you're basing it on. I thought Earth orbited a yellow star. This one's red.
And
that seems like a pretty big red flag to me.
If you want to be a pessimist, then I guess that's true.
No, it's true because it's a fact. You don't get to decide what is or isn't true about facts.
Well, in any event, I say we venture out and explore a little bit. We got plenty of food and water. We can make a day of it.
But there are no readings at all in the scouters. We're unlikely to find anything.
And what if we find pirate booty? Ever think of that?
No. Why would I?
Pirates always use uninhabited worlds for stashing their booty.
Do you have any idea how many uninhabited worlds there are in the universe?
Oh, at least 6.
Technically, there are at least 6.
See? I know what I'm talking about. Let's head out.
I don't feel good about this.
What's there to not feel good about?
What if the thing that was blocking off the engines made it through atmospheric entry with us? Remember the giant plant monster thing on the planet with all the birds?
You're all over the place here. What do giant plants on planets hundreds of light years away have to do with mysterious masses of matter that were clogging our engine thrusters?
Seriously? Are you this blind to reality on purpose?
I don't know. Let's find out.
But something feels off. I feel like there's something gnawing at the part of my brain where I was getting that odd, ESP feeling from those birds.
I mean, feel free to stay here by yourself if some sort of Boogan hitched a ride on our ship and attacks you.
Well, I suppose if I'm going to die, I'd like to know there's at least a chance of you being taken out with me.
That's the spirit, recruit. Now let's head out and dive into this week's topic. And this week, this is going to be an interesting one. We're going to break from format a little bit here in terms of both content and structure. We are going to be talking about Akira Toriyama's Manga Theater, which is actually 3 different volumes of Akira Toriyama one-shots and Dragon Ball prototypes and contest entries and things like that were published by him over the years, or by Bird Studios over the years, under the title of Akira Toriyama's Crummy Manga Theater, where he would also include little tips and things about how he became a mangaka and how to do it and how he draws and things like that. It was eventually condensed into a single volume and brought to the US in hardback form I can't remember exactly when. 2021. It still retains some of those. My understanding, at least, is it still retains at least some of those little tips and things from him, because in between each one of those, the chapters that sort of comprise all these like one shots and things, there is a little Toribot drawing that'll say like, back when I drew this, and it is then like a little 1-page comic about when he drew that individual chapter. They're like humorous, like, you know, the ones for his first couple are the Toribot, and then some sort of version of Torishima being like, this sucks. and let's just say Torishima's not wrong.
In a lot of cases, yeah, no, he's not wrong.
And then in like other cases, it says like, you know, I submitted this for a contest, because what Shonen Jump would do is they would run like, they would call it the Readers Contest every year for a long time, where every serialized mangaka working under them, once, like, however many there were, I don't know all the details behind this, but however many mangaka they had working for them that were serialized, each one would 1 week at a time have to write a special chapter of like a standalone one shot. And then readers would eventually, like, after, you know, this would take obviously several weeks. And then once each person had done one, then readers would vote on which one was their favorite. And then that mangaka got like a bonus or a prize. So that's what some of these are from. Some of them are his sort of attempts to kind of get a handle on where he wanted Dragon Ball to go. Some of them are his attempts to get a handle on his first attempt at getting serialized with Shonen Jump. And as you get later in the volume, which we're not going to talk about the ones that are later in the volume, but as you get later in the volume, they are like things he's doing as Dragon Ball is winding down to, I don't know 100%, maybe see if he has another one in him, or even just sort of like fulfill some contractual obligations. But yeah, there's a few later, there's some ones later on that are a little more serialized. They'll have like 2 to 4 chapters. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run through these and just kind of talk about them and talk about our thoughts and feelings on them. We said a couple of times, we've hit the end of original Dragon Ball, and so we kind of went and we cleaned up all the games that tie into original Dragon Ball, and now we're kind of cleaning up a large chunk of Toriyama that sort of leads up to the end of the original Dragon Ball. We're not obviously hitting Dr. Slump. That'll be sort of its own thing eventually at some point.
The overall theme for these, as we read through them, for me, it really just highlighted that, like, even the greats have to start somewhere.
Yeah. We're only going to go up to Cashman, and the reason for that is that Cashman was published in like 1991, which is during the Z era of Dragon Ball. But it's, as you get later in this volume, you can see his confidence start to grow, his voice start to come through, and his ability to sprinkle in the references to things he likes without relying on them.
There's a couple of chapters where he goes really heavy on like the jokes and the gags and stuff, and it's pretty clear that it's all cultural and probably a little dated at this point. The humor's almost opaque to me. Like, it's hard for me to understand it because it's so culturally different from what I normally expect for humor. So yeah,
especially the earlier ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonder Island in particular for me stands out as just a kind of what did I just read type situation.
Yes. We start there. I know.
Yeah.
We'll start with Wonder Island.
Yeah. So this one's 2 chapters. The stories in them are completely unrelated as far as I could tell. The first one is about like a, I guess would it be like a World War II era fighter pilot trying to
Yeah,
get back to Japan?
he's like a failed kamikaze.
And then the second one is kind of like a, I guess the best way to describe it is almost like a really bad Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But that's pretty much all I can tell you, because
yeah, the first one especially is like attempting to describe the plot of it it's like almost impossible. It's the like the failed attempts of a failed kamikaze pilot to get off of this island that he's been stuck on for 35 years. And it's just gags. It's like just wall-to-wall gags, which makes like none of them land. It's super sloppy. It's super slapdash. It feels like this was one of those ones where you feel like in some ways this is a person who doesn't know if they're ever going to get a second chance. So they're putting in like everything that they like into one thing.
Yeah. There are a couple of things. The first thing I wanted to make note of was the onomatopoeias in English, which is kind of like his stylistic thing, is used to heavy effect in this. Mostly because it's all like a lot of these are like visual gags, and so he's putting in sound effects for them and stuff. It's just incoherent to me. Like I just cannot make heads or tails of this thing.
Yeah, the first one especially, I don't know. I don't know which one I dislike more. Because the first one is maybe almost like it's more wildly creative, and the second one is a lot more of me just going, "Oh, I recognize that. Oh, I recognize that. Oh, I recognize that."
Yeah.
Even as like I took little notes, even just as I was reading, the police sergeant in Wonder Island 2 looks like an ultra monster called Garamon, and then later in the chapter he is dressed like Garamon. So, but yeah, the second one is like, there's Garamon, and there's tons of kaiju gags. There's like obvious ones. There's a guy dressed like Godzilla. There's a guy dressed like Kong. There's an Ultraman one. At the very end, there's like a giant Frankenstein looking thing, and like what looks like almost like a Triceratops. That's from a movie called Frankenstein Conquers the World. And it's weird because there's a part of me that's like, oh, that's like fun. And I guess like if that was your whole thing of like riffing on kaiju. But then he slaps in like a C-3PO in the middle, because it's like sloppy and unfocused.
Yeah, it's almost exactly like you described. Like he was just slapping as much stuff that he liked into it as he could.
Because he was unsure if he would ever get another chance, almost. Like that's what it feels like. So yeah, that's the Wonder Islands. They are not good.
After that, let's see, we got Tomato Girl Detective. This is one chapter. It's basically a girl delinquent who becomes a detective and arrests a legally unique, not at all Clark Kent, with her bumbling partner.
He's 100% Clark Kent. His name is Karaku Kentu.
No, that's a totally different name. That can't be him. It's legally distinct. This is another kind of like buddy cop comedy type thing. Kind of like a little bit like Wonder Island 2, but definitely more developed, a little bit more focused. But for me, again, the humor just doesn't hit.
You know what's interesting? I just kind of came to me as we're sitting here talking about it's another buddy cop kind of thing, is how often that's a motif in kind of a lot of these.
Yeah.
And then that also becomes a little bit of a thing in Dr. Slump too. There's the characters that are cops, right? And then that's dropped entirely in Dragon Ball. And then I've never read Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, but I wonder if it would be really interesting to read like Tomato Gumshoe and Wonder Island butted up against Jocko.
I'd be willing to have that experiment.
But like, yeah, the idea of like here's my cop comedy, but I'm good at writing now.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Tomato the Cutesy Gumshoe or Tomato Girl Detective, it's okay. There's a couple of interesting, like someone shouts out Specium Ray. That's Ultraman's beam that he does with his hands. And then the other note, like just kind of interesting thing I had on this is she's Tomato Akai, and Akai is a shade of red, and so it means red. So she's a red tomato.
Okay. I don't know how that relates to the character, but all right.
This one's okay, right?
Yeah, like it's like I said, it's better than Wonder Island 2, definitely, because there's like an actual like plot line here. But yeah, the humor is just not my brand. I'm not saying it's like bad humor or anything like that. It's just it wasn't really hitting for me. I don't have a lot of patience for characters that are completely incompetent, that sort of luck themselves into success.
I'm of mixed minds on it, because one of my just in general like favorite movies and certainly favorite characters and favorite performances, Jack Burton as portrayed by Kurt Russell in Big Trouble in Little China. But the joke of that is basically this is a movie that sort of like follows around the bumbling sidekick who thinks he's the main character. And it's funny because, especially because Jack Burton's the white guy and he's in like Chinatown. Yeah. And so the person he thinks is his sidekick is a little Asian dude. And so that's the usual dynamic in a lot of movies. The Office even made a complete like riff on that when they first discovered the script for Threat Level Midnight. Michael Scarn's sidekick was a bumbling Asian named Samuel L. Chang. This completely flips that on its head. The Asian guy's the straight man, the white guy's the bumbling sidekick, but then the movie also follows the bumbling sidekick.
It's kind of that same format where it's really kind of more focused on him for the narrative. Mm-hmm. And then she's just kind of there, and it's more about his reaction to the things that she does. So yeah, I could definitely see that comparison being made here.
Yeah. This one's okay.
This one's kind of middling for me.
Before we move on, Wonder Island 1 and 2 were published in like 78 and 79 in Weekly Shonen Jump. And then Tomato Girl Detective was also published in 79. So this is pre-slump.
It was pretty early, yeah. As for Pola and Roid, I don't have the date on that one. Do you have the date on that one, possibly?
I can grab it real quick. It was 81.
All right, so a few more years. And that kind of makes sense, honestly.
Dr. Slump has started. Well, because that's actually the kind of story, I think. We've told this story before, and I don't 100% remember how it lines up, but I think this is accurate. He did those 2 Wonder Islands, and Torishima was like, "These suck, dude." And then he was like, "How about do one with a girl as the main character?" And Toriyama was like, "But I'm writing for a magazine on that boys read." And he was like, "Just give it a try and see if it's more popular." And then Tomato Girl Detective was more popular. And so then Torishima was like, "Do it again, but like just a little better this time." and that's when he created Dr. Slump. Then Dr. Slump becomes like a phenomenon, actually.
So yeah, Pola and Roid is basically about a space taxi pilot named Roid. He crash lands on a planet that he was called to by Pola to pick her up and take her somewhere. And then they free the planet from a Hornet Darth Vader. The humor in this one's a little dicey in some spots.
It is. This one I had a couple of like the puns start in earnest here.
Yeah.
He's already got the puns rolling in Dr. Slump. He brings that over here. He calls the ship or the planet at the beginning is called like Yakandagaya. Yakan means kettle, and it's shaped just like a tea kettle. The emperor is Emperor Gaganbo, and it's the Gaganbo Empire. Gaganbo is the Japanese word for the crane fly, which is also known as the mosquito hawk. It's those big, they look like mosquitoes.
Okay.
But they're gigantic and they don't bite you. There's a character named Kera, and that's a type of cricket. So it's all insect puns.
Yeah.
And then there was also a character named like Pata Pata, and that's the sound, that's like the Japanese onomatopoeia for the sound of wings flapping through the air.
For me, this one is definitely a step in the right direction. And also his humor, he's starting to derive more from the plot as opposed to like with Wonder Island, where it's just a string of jokes that aren't really related.
Mm-hmm. This was created as part of the Jump Readers Award competition that we mentioned earlier, where mangaka would enter one-shots and the most popular one would win a prize. It won!
Huzzah!
And for this, Akira Toriyama won a trip to Switzerland.
Actually, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, Pola and Roid is okay.
Yeah.
The next one in the volume is one that, so not to throw Bekinney under the bus and how he's accessing these, but we'll just say his copy got lost in space mail.
Indeed.
His copy of the book, which he did order. He did order a copy of the book. It got lost in space mail. We're in these far reaches of uncharted space. No one knows how to get stuff to us.
So Amazon can get you stuff in 2 days on Earth, but when they got to ship it out into space, it's a little less consistent.
Right. So it was not in the works that Bekinney tracked down, but the next one is called Mad Matic. This one is about a village that, like, I think it's hundreds of years ago, it might be dozens of years ago, it doesn't super matter, was terrorized by a dragon, and they managed to catch the dragon inside of a giant refrigerator. They lock him up, and they keep it locked, and then there's like a guardian of the mystical fridge forever. Flash forward, and the main character, who's like unnamed, and his dog meet the lone survivors of the village who are there like guarding the refrigerator and also attempting to combat the Gungan army. Then he, like, this man just really, really wants a beer, and so he winds up cracking the fridge open, and the dragon comes out and defeats the Gungan army and drives them away, and it turns out that the dragon was nice this whole time and he just wants to hang out and drink a couple beers.
Sounds like my kind of dragon, honestly.
The one character in this is named Muhi. Muhi means unparalleled. It's like a little boy who's like acts bigger than he is, so he's like unparalleled. Nevea in Japanese means white as snow, and then the Gungan army. Gungan is one of those things. Again, it's like another onomatopoeia for like the steady forward plodding of boots. So I don't know how that also ties into possibly they fly around in a giant orca, but
I'm a little disappointed that the Gungans aren't Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, they're not problematic stereotypes of, what were the Gungans like stereotypes of?
I don't remember.
But Mad Matic is another, like, you can even tell in the title, it's like another like kind of Mad Max kind of riff, which Toriyama tends towards several times throughout this, and then later on we've already talked about Sandland. This is kind of like another, like the character who might as well be named Mad Matic. He's never named, but he's like flying through the desert and he just really wants a drink. And he's like a roving, there's like roving gangs and stuff, so it's a very like Mad Maxy kind of feeling type of thing. This one's actually pretty fun, and the art's pretty good. It just, again, I don't know if I'm missing some of the humor. They talk about the Gungan army, and then they're flying around in a giant or killer whale, I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I get you. But the premise to me sounds pretty good, especially the ending.
Yeah. Still pre-Dragon Ball. This is 82. This was another entry into the contest. I don't believe it won this time.
That's unfortunate. Next up, we have Chobit. This is another one-chapter story. Basically, new deputy in town takes down a deadly outlaw with his genie sidekick that makes him immortal. And he also gets sexually harassed by his coworker. I'm just not really sure where he was going with this.
Yeah.
Because it's like modern day Cop, but it's like old Wild West town.
Mm-hmm.
So like everyone else is dressed like cowboys, and it's like the buildings like with the shiplap siding and all that stuff. But then there's also like modern traffic lights and cars. So I mean, it's probably nitpicky to complain about it, honestly, because it's a comic book. But
this one is this one's also like, this one is more uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yes, this one actually makes me really uncomfortable.
This was a really hard one to do any research on at all, because there's a full-on serialized manga called Chobits. And
I actually know that one.
And it got like an anime adaptation on, I think, like the Sci-Fi Channel. But what's kind of interesting, like, I couldn't figure out, because the Chobits in Chobits, the serialized manga that ran for 2 years, are named after it's like some sort of like a mashup of words that the character's dad comes up with. But they keep saying that it also means like cutesy and small, and that's like also what Chobit is. So
okay, so it's describing his little genie sidekick.
So is Chobit, like, does Chobit mean like cutesy and small in Japanese? I kind of couldn't.
That would be my guess.
Parse through that one. There is a second Chobit also.
Oh, there is?
Yeah. In the first one, they're in Ton Village, Ton, and Ton in that context means knock knock. So they're in Knock Knock Village. And then in the second one, they move to Tan Village. And Tan is just like, it's an even cuter version of Chan. And we've talked about like the honorifics in Japan, and if you call someone Chan or Chan, I think it's Chan. If you're familiar with My Hero Academia, for example, Izuku Midoriya Deku constantly calls Katsuki Bakugo Kachan, because they were childhood friends, and so he's like his childhood cute friend playmate.
Who tells him to kill himself.
Yes. So did you read the one where they were very concerned about traffic accidents in this first one?
No, the first one is the really small gunman.
Okay.
Who's in this tiny truck.
And it's also like, it's a very small village where like there's the one huge issue. The first day is like something super. Yeah, so he's like a cop. He's riding around on his motorcycle. It starts, and it's a pig and a bull are fighting each other.
That is not the episode I'm looking at.
It's a pig and a bull fighting each other over what tastes better, beef or pork.
All right, that's a pretty good joke, actually.
And then Chobit shows up in her flying saucer, which is shaped like a tea kettle again. Do you have the one where she's taking a bath in the cup?
Nope.
No? That's super uncomfortable, so.
Oh, well, glad I missed that then. Fantastic.
She's definitely super duper naked, and then he doesn't want his sister to find out she exists, so he throws her into his mouth while she's naked.
Oh, that's okay.
And then
it looks like I've got the second.
And then he swallows her by accident, and he can't puke her out, so he has to take a laxative.
Oh, dude. I am glad I did not find that chapter.
And then, does yours end with her growing giant or no?
No.
No? Okay, so then, like, yeah, she's hanging out with him, at the end of the first one, and he's like, I just wish you could make yourself bigger. And she's like, oh, I can. And then she makes herself big enough to explode through the house. So then, does yours start with them going to Tan Town?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so you have that one.
Yeah.
The girl's his partner.
The sheriff's daughter.
Yeah.
And his partner. That's the one who sexually harasses him.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. We're on the same page now. Not
All
literally,
right.
but...
Well, I mean, kind of literally. Closer than we were before.
So that's Chobit. It's very problematic.
Yeah, this is a step backwards, in my opinion.
These were also published for the first one was published for the Reader's Choice Award, and then the second one, the one that you read, was not, because I think they stopped doing it that year.
Oh.
So this one was just published for fun. He says he liked them, but they weren't popular. Which, can't imagine why.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I believe they weren't popular.
What I was unsure of is, and I don't know, does she do it in this one at all? I don't know if she does. She says choina whenever she's performing magic.
That might be for your particular translation, because I don't think I got that.
It might not be something she does in the second one. In the first one, whenever she's like about to do magic, she says choina, and then like something magical happens. And I didn't know if that means something. With Chobit 2 is the end of what it was when originally published, the first volume of Akira Toriyama's Crummy Manga Theater back in the day. And, now they just call it Akira Toriyama's Manga Theater. I guess they didn't feel comfortable calling it Crummy, but if you were to just take this first volume with the two Wonder Islands, Tomato, Pola and Roid, Matic, and Chobit, I think you could comfortably call it Crummy. Pola and Roid is okay, and Matic is fun, and you can kind of keep the rest.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
There's Today's Highlight Island, which this one is just like, is going to school, and it's like a very gaggy thing, and he needs to get his tooth worked on. He finally does get his tooth pulled out by the doctor, and like that's kind of... Oh no, his tooth doesn't get pulled out by the doctor. It gets pulled out by like some girl who kicks him in the face for staring at her.
Female empowerment. Woo!
It's not so good. It's weird. So Today's Highlight Island, okay. So it's interesting where it's placed in the book. These are not placed strictly chronologically. Like, I think I forgot to mention, like, Matic was 82. That's still slightly before Dragon Ball. Chobit is 83, and then June of 83, and Dragon Ball started in August of 83. Or no, Dragon Ball started in 84 with, like, Dragon Boy and the Adventure of Tongpoo, or I think it's Tongpoo, coming out in very late 83. So Chobit just slightly precedes the Dragon Ball era. Then Today's Highlight Island is 79.
Oh, so it's going way back to the beginning then.
And yes, when you look at it, it very much like it's much more crudely drawn. It's like much more just like gags. Like it starts with his alarm clock goes off and a pig comes out of it. Like he doesn't wake up, and then the pig hits him in the head with a mallet and his eyes pop out of his head. And then the pig puts his eyes, one in his back in his eye hole and one up his nose. I don't get it.
So it's more like Wonder Island.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Escape as one chapter. This one's really short. I almost don't even want to like give the premise because I feel like you just kind of would destroy the purpose of reading it if you just gave the premise away.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a girl trying to escape from something that's unseen.
But we're not going to say what it is.
Yes. But that one's kind of cool.
And it was full color for me, so that was a nice change of pace.
Not in this volume, it's not. And then after Escape is Pink the Rainjack. Did you actually have that one?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Is it one chapter or is it more than one chapter?
Yeah, Pink is just like a one shot.
Okay. Pink is kind of basically Toriyama's first pass at Sandland, but with a different cast. So as opposed to like Sheriff Rao, there's a much younger. He actually looks like a young Master Roshi.
Yeah.
And then the character Pink is a youngish woman. I don't know, girl or woman. I'm not really sure which. I don't think it's ever explicitly stated.
It's not. Thankfully?
Again, it's got some moments here between the two characters that make me a little uncomfortable, but yeah, whatever. But yeah, so it's basically Sandland. It's even the whole plot point of like securing water for like a desert people. Definitely smaller scale as opposed to like an entire nation. This is just like one small town. And then the final bit there is instead of finding a dammed up river that they blow up the dam and release water for everybody, they actually find out that the bad guys have captured like a rain demon or a demon that creates water, and then they, instead of letting him create rain for the region and like normal, they're kind of like keeping him captive and forcing him to fill up bottles of water that they sell for exorbitant prices.
Yeah. Yeah, so you got more Mad Max riffing here. And yeah, it's a lot like it's like proto Sandland.
With just I don't know, it didn't hit for me quite as well.
He perfected it with Sandland, basically.
Oh, absolutely.
Pink the Rainjack gets an anime adaptation, though. It's like a 20-minute little short that I think we're going to talk about separately someday. So my vision for talking about Akira Toriyama's manga theater here is we're going to talk about a bunch of these chapters one time, then we'll talk about a bunch of the chapters another time, and then the third time, when we come back to this, we'll hit up, I think, Pink the Rainjack and a few others got anime adaptations, and we'll take a look at those. I'm not 100% sure if it might have been like part of the Matsuri Film Festival. Yes, it premiered at the Toei Anime Festival alongside alongside Kenosuke-sama.
Oh.
Which we'll be talking about in a bit. And Dragon Ball Z, The Tree of Might.
Honestly, that would have probably been a really good one to go see in person.
Yeah.
Tree of Might's probably my favorite Dragon Ball Z movie, in all honesty.
And this, like you said, this doesn't hit because I think part of the reason this doesn't hit is because we just read Sandland.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it because I'm like, oh, okay, so I already know what this storyline is. But that said, this one's probably got the best storyline out of everything that we're going to talk about today. On top of that, you can really see here that he's starting to like branch out and start to develop like better character design. Like the design for the sheriff actually looks pretty good, and we know that he likes it because he eventually uses it for like young Master Roshi. But yeah, no, this is definitely that same continuing trend where you can see that he's getting better over time.
Yeah, and this is 82. This is late 82, December. So this is as his art is like really improving and his skills are getting a lot better. The next one is Dragon Boy.
Yes, I got 2 chapters for this one. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep. Well, we've talked about Dragon Boy a little bit. We talked about like Dragon Ball prototypes before, so
yeah, and this is literally just a less polished version of Dragon Ball.
Essentially. And we've already talked about it, so I don't want to get too crazy deep into it because if you want to kind of go back and listen, we had an episode called Dragon Ball Prototypes.
Yeah.
And we talked about Dragon Boy and then the next one, The Adventure of Tongpoo in more detail. Dragon Boy's okay. You can see what it's going for, but it is like it is that thing of like, if I'm Torishima, I look at that and I go, oh, okay, you got something here, but try it again, except better this time.
Yeah, it gives me like Dragon Ball kind of energy, but the characters are just not as good as Dragon Ball. So you can definitely see that this is absolutely something that we're like, oh, we might have something here, but like let's do something a little different with these characters. Let's do something to sort of jazz this up a little.
It also like it moves a little too quickly. Maybe that's just only a thing that a Dragon Ball fan would say, since Dragon Ball is kind of notoriously slower.
Yeah.
But this does feel like it moves just a little too fast.
And I'm wondering if that's more like he's just trying to put as much plot in here as he can to try and catch readers' attention to get it serialized.
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
kind of the feeling that I'm getting here. But yeah, the opening 2 pages are almost straight up exactly what ends up being the opening for Dragon Ball.
But then, the opening, roughly 4 pages is like Dragon Ball's first chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a blistering pace compared to actual Dragon Ball.
It just moves very quickly, but it's okay.
Yeah, no, if for the listeners out there, those of you that do read this, you're going to read this and go, oh, okay, no, this is literally just like a more condensed, rougher version of early Dragon Ball. And I feel like it's worth the read just kind of to be able to get that comparison, especially because it's only 2 chapters, which is fairly short. So
that goes for Adventure of Tongpoo also, or Tongpoo. Very similar. Again, this one a little less similar in plot, but much more similar in kind of character dynamics and characters and some of that kind of stuff. It's this little boy who's unusually strong and the girl, and they go on an adventure together. It really is. If you mash together Dragon Boy and Tongpo, you get extremely close to what Dragon Ball is.
Yeah.
The only other little notes I have that I'm not sure if we mentioned when we talked about this last time is Plamo or Pramo means plastic model.
Mm-hmm.
And Tongpo means eastern wind. Stylistically, I thought this Tongpo is the closest to Dragon Ball, though.
Yeah. I totally forgot about this, but there's the capsules show up in this.
Yes.
Slightly different mechanism. You have to put them in boiling water to get them to pop. But we get a lot of really nice shots. He does a couple half-page shots here.
Yeah.
Where it'll be a crashed spaceship and then some jungle behind it and stuff that looks really good.
Yeah, you could see where if I'm Torishima looking at, okay, these are the last 2 things you gave me. These are really, really close. Do something, it's like do something story-wise more similar to that first one, but character-wise more similar to that second one, and you got something here.
Honestly, yeah. The girl's design in this one, I think, is actually pretty close to Bulma, too, on top of that.
It is. And her, her personality in a lot of ways, too, right? Where she's, trying to use her feminine wiles.
Well, this character's not as smart as Bulma, but yeah, no. Has a lot of, like you said, the same, I don't want to say weaknesses, but maybe character flaws.
Yeah. A lot of the same character flaws, yes. But yeah, the dynamic is she's kind of the dumb one and the boy's kind of the smarter one.
I mean, I guess it makes sense once you learn about the boy's secret. But
right. But you could just see how that formula,
it kind of
works so much better when you flip it the other way.
Yeah.
Especially because you need the characters themselves to be good foils for each other. And Bulma is physically weak, but very intelligent and very worldly. And then Goku, extremely strong, but dubious intelligence and not worldly.
Yeah, and reading this kind of helps accentuate that point, because when you've got a character who is strong and the smarter one of the two, it almost feels like, well, why is there even this other character?
Just for the fan servicey part of it, which then
I would assume.
Which then adds, to me, it adds another layer of discomfort to it because
the woman has no agency.
and also she is almost unawares of even what's going on, and whereas Bulma is more, I'll use it when I need to, but I also kind of I know my boundaries.
Yeah.
very, very close though to Dragon Ball, and also time wise, just these are like the lead up to Dragon Ball.
Yeah. Next up, I have Mr. Ho.
So do I.
All right, one chapter?
Yes.
All right. This is basically what would happen if Yamcha didn't have the other Z fighters to get in his way. It's just kind of like this goofy, aloof super soldier saves the town from a gang of extortionists posing as members of the military. Like a comedic version of Die Hard.
Did you find this one a little potentially culturally difficult to parse? Because I wasn't sure if he was trying to riff on Korea at all with like all this north-south stuff.
Ooh, you know what? That's an angle I hadn't considered.
But I also wasn't sure, like, nothing else about it really screamed Korea to me.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up at first, but now that you've pointed out, especially with all the talk about like North versus South, I could see why somebody might make that might make that assumption.
But then I was like, well, could it be like a Honshu Okinawa thing? Because the Okinawans,
that's possible too. Yeah,
the Okinawans really do not like the mainland Japanese, so I wasn't sure if he was trying to riff on some of that at all. Nothing else
possible
about it really felt like it screamed that, but he made like this weird point of saying that the main character, who is Mr. Ho, right?
Yeah.
That he was like a former soldier from the North visiting the South. Nobody liked him because they could tell he was from the North, and they could tell he was a soldier, and they assumed he's with this gang of northern soldiers that's harassing them. And then they're the Chai gang, which threw another layer of obfuscation onto it for me, because chai is that Indian tea.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, is there something that I'm missing with India?
I don't know.
Especially because then he's a black beret, as they say at the end, and black berets were a staple of the like British occupation forces in India.
Oh, maybe it's like a India Nepal thing, maybe?
So there's all this stuff going on, and I didn't like understand any of it.
Yeah, I feel like there probably is some cultural shorthand in here that we're just not picking up because we're not from that culture. But that aside, me personally, I enjoyed this one. I thought it was pretty fun. It's definitely probably the most serious one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like it does have moments of humor, but it's definitely more of a I guess it takes itself a little bit more seriously than the other stories.
Yeah, and well, this one is published in 86. So what is Dragon Ball up to in 86? The TV series is just kicking off. We're around the end of the Tenkaichi Budokai. We're like getting kind of sort of somewhere where Dragon Ball, it is like to a little bit like Dragon Ball is less of a gag manga constantly. Yeah. So you could see him starting to develop some of his slightly more serious storytelling here.
And I'm wondering if maybe this is like his way of testing out different action-y stuff, since his main series is becoming more action oriented. I'm wondering if this is just him experimenting with a few things, trying new stuff. And ultimately I think it works. I think it's a decent story. The art's good. I like the characters. There's way less like problematic humor.
Oh yeah.
With the female character in this one. Yeah, overall I give this one like a thumbs up. I would be interested to see like a few more chapters of this and see what he was planning on doing with it.
Yeah, and I don't think this one ever received an anime adaptation.
That's too bad. Next up, I have Kinosuke-sama. So Konosuke-sama is just about a little samurai boy getting terrible dating advice from a pig, and then he gets in a fight, and then he tries to steal a car.
Yep. It's
That's the high points, basically.
It's a little boy's like foibles in getting a date.
Yeah.
And going on a date. And it's couched in, I don't know if this would be the Edo era.
I think that's maybe an okay estimate.
Like in terms of their sort of society, right? Like, yes, okay, there's obviously that thing that Toriyama likes to do of setting it in a place that's very indefinable because young master Konosuke has his, I forget what that haircut's called.
He's got the top knot with like the shaved head, basically.
Yeah, and we talked about that in a previous episode. But yeah, he's got that haircut, and he speaks very properly. Like, you can even tell in English he has that sort of like he says, "Mother, I have returned," and someone tells him something, and he says, "Understood." You know, he has a very proper way of speech and speaking. But there's cars.
Yeah, anachronisms are okay.
Yeah, it's just it's Toriyama doing his thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of like humor. I don't want to say like sexually based humor, but like there's definitely like a lot of jokes that Toriyama makes about like the dynamics between men and women and things like that. I think they actually work pretty well in this setting because it's couched in the ignorance of a child, not understanding how these things are supposed to work. So a lot of the stuff that might not go over well if it was adults doing it actually kind of seems sort of funny and a lot more innocent when it's a child doing it.
Yeah, and especially because he's having someone who obviously doesn't understand it explaining it to him too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a little action sequence where there's like two hoodlums show up and are like, "Hey, you know, we're gonna give you the business." And then he does the Goku thing where the kid's, you know, way stronger than he should be.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's okay. This one's fun. I like, for like a funny thing, it's funny because, again, you know, we just mentioned that Mr. Ho is written kind of as Dragon Ball is transitioning into more serious storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Konosuke is written in like 87 when Dragon Ball is really starting to like ramp up on the seriousness, and it's almost like, oh, let me do this thing that's like more lighthearted.
Sure.
And then up next is the Elder.
Sanchoh.
Yeah.
And this is just an old man chasing down a super spy in a car chase that sort of gives Looney Tunes vibes.
This is another one where it's like the it's a gag manga, and the gag is all built around a singular driving force.
Mm-hmm.
And the driving force is, yeah, this super spy has planted a bomb that is going to blow up. Is he going to blow up like a whole city or something?
It was like a nuclear power plant, I think.
Along the way, he happens to litter, and the old man sees him litter, and he's gonna chase him back down to make sure he cleans up his trash. And within that, he ends up destroying the car that the spy was driving, and thereby destroying the trigger and saving everyone.
Yeah, also, I want one of these cars. These cars are amazing. They have rocket boosters on them, they can fly, they have weapons, smoke screens. Think of like if you took Inspector Gadget and mixed it with Speed Racer. That's kind of what this story's giving.
And the old man is like Roshi if Roshi was not intentionally pervy. Like,
but yeah, this one's
like
almost completely just action.
Yeah, it's fun,
which is kind of fun because it's still got tons of gags and jokes in it.
That's like the end of Volume 2. And I would say, so Volume 2 is Today's Highlight Island, which Escape, which is pretty good. Pink, which we more or less like decent.
Yeah,
Dragon Boy and Tongpoo, which are, I think, at least like interesting if you're a Dragon Ball fan. Mr. Ho, which is okay. And then Kenosuke and the Elder, which we kind of like, okay, volume 2, not bad.
Definitely a step above volume 1.
And then we'll get into a couple of the ones in volume 3. We start with little Mamejiro.
Yes. Basically, this kid fails spectacularly at being a delinquent.
What's real like fun about this one is I wouldn't have put like I've had this Toriyama's manga theater thing for a while. I've read it before and I even forgot like most of it. So I didn't pick it up until this kind of reread. This is like Beelzebub from
I could see that.
Sandland. Like he thinks he's like a delinquent. He thinks he's such a bad guy. He thinks he's like a bad person, but he like does the right thing,
heroic things.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to do like he doesn't want to do anything that's actually evil. He just wants to like look like he is. This was another one where like I was just trying to do a little bit of looking into it, and I kind of stumbled across similar to when we talked about Yajirobe, and his name means second son of the house of Ya, or something like that. I can't 100% remember, but it was something along those lines. Mamejiro means like hardworking second son. And that there's some interesting, like, when you consider that's the meaning of the name, like, he's working so hard to try and be, like, a bad, like, he's hardworking. Yeah. And he's, like, a young, that's a fun name for that character, then.
Also, this guy just looks like Krillin with hair.
That is what Krillin looks like with hair. And then that brings us to the last one we're going to talk about today.
Which I don't have.
Oh, you don't have Karamaru and the Perfect Day?
I do not.
Oh. When you get your book in, you gotta check this one out. This one's cool. It's it's a little boy named Karamaru who is like, it's almost like he's Goku prior to his grandfather passing away, living in the wilderness with his grandfather, who is teaching him, it's ninja stuff, or samurai stuff. Like, he can throw stars, and he could throw these stars with such precision that he hits locusts sitting on trees, and then uses them to feed to birds, so that he can then collect their eggs with their permission to bring to his grandfather. So he's like this. It's like Goku, like he's like very in tune with nature.
Goku when he's still living in the mountains and he's running around, eating things, chasing stuff.
So then his grandfather says, I need you to take these mushrooms into town to sell them because we need money. So on his way, he encounters a samurai who, personality-wise, reminds me a lot of Yajirobe, except that, like, Yajirobe is a joke only because he's hanging around these characters who could blow up the earth. Yajirobe himself could beat the crap out of any human being.
Yeah.
But still, he comes across this character who's also a samurai, but is like a doofus. And he's like, oh, how cute, you think you're a samurai? I'll show you what a real samurai is. And he, like, constantly misses his shuriken throws. He's terrible. And then when, like, two guys come up to rob Karamaru, he's like, oh, hang on, young man, like, I'll protect you. And the guys knock him out in one punch. And then Karamaru beats the absolute crap out of them. And then when the guy comes to, the boy is like, wow, you were able to beat them up while you were knocked out? That's incredible. And, like, that's the end. It's cute. It's fun. It's funny. It's like a very early Dragon Ball chapter, like, done really well.
All right. I'll have to read that then.
And then that's the end, because then Cashman is like multiple chapters, and there's Go Akman, which is also multiple chapters, and there's Dub and Peter, which is also multiple chapters, so we'll save those for another time. That's Akira Toriyama's manga theater, at least, we'll say part 1 of between 2 and 3. Not like it's not going to be our next episode or anything. We just wanted to do this as something a little different, something to just kind of dig into some other Toriyama stuff and stuff that was all published before the original run of Dragon Ball ended.
So, based on what we've read so far, would you recommend this collection to Toriyama fans?
To Toriyama fans, yes. To general manga fans, I think no.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. The early stuff is just so rough that it would be hard, I think, to keep anybody's attention in it.
Now, if this was still split apart, I would say Volume 1, pass. Volume 2, I might recommend Volume 2 to general manga fans. If all the stories that were in Volume 2 were being sold by themselves in the US for like $9.95 or something, yeah, pick that. Like, if that's a good spot where if you want to know what Toriyama's all about and get a good feel for like the breadth of his career, because it starts with one of his very earliest ones with today's Highlight Island, which sucks, but I mean, what are you going to do? Everything else in Volume 2 is like the full spectrum of what Toriyama does, both good and bad.
Yeah, and for the most part, it's competently done. On top of that, so it's just generally enjoyable as well. I also think that this is a really good bit of media for anybody who themselves are a creative person and working on perfecting their art or their craft. I think it's a really good source of inspiration to show, like, hey, you know, probably the most famous mangaka ever started in probably the same place as a lot of people that are trying to get into the business. You know, his work might be a little rough. Maybe he needs a better editor, but it's really nice to show that process of him honing his craft, and I feel like it'd be a good motivator for folks too.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, I'm getting a reading on my scouter.
Yeah, me too. Let's check it out.
Let's check it out. Might as well be etched into my tombstone.
If you're constantly dying, as you claim, how can you have a tombstone when you're standing right here still?
Hey, shut up. I'm just saying, you always want to check things out, and it almost always winds up being a bad idea.
It's located us a couple potential candidates a couple times.
And those potential candidates got ripped apart by monsters, or turned out to be monsters who tried to kill us. Can't we just say we investigated, found nothing, head back to the ship, and get out of here?
Considering this show is being broadcast around the universe, no, we can't.
But haven't we done and said other things along the way that would be incriminating or untruthful?
Listen, if you think too hard about what we have and haven't done, you'll get a headache trying to keep track of all the logic along the way.
I might also realize there are patterns to how we do things and wind up actually surviving for once.
You might, but how has that worked out for you so far?
I feel like it'll pay off sooner or later.
And I feel like chasing down leads will pay off sooner or later. One of us is bound to be right. Let's find out which one.
Can we not?
No, we can't not.
My head's starting to hurt.
And then it's time we take our leave of you here, listeners.
Hey, I survived for a change.
Can you stow it? I'm trying to sign off here.
What, I can't make comments anymore?
Not when I'm trying to end episodes, you can't. Well, no snappy comeback?
I was being quiet. I thought you were trying to sign off.
I am, if you'd just stop talking. Will Bekinney ever stop interrupting my sign-offs? Which one of us will be right about our forthcoming exploration? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kit. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.